Hello, everyone. It's Alexander Platt here from the Crosse Symphony Orchestra. I hope this message finds you safe and well in these difficult and complicated times. As you may know, we had planned to have as the grand finale of our upcoming Saturday, March 5th concert of the Crosse Symphony Orchestra be the justly famous Symphony No.1, the so-called Winter Dreams Symphony, by the great 19th century Russian composer Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky was a genius whose music ultimately far transcends issues of politics and war. And yet, as we all know, as I speak to you, Russian forces are laying siege to the nation of Ukraine, and we felt the least that we could do would be to make a change in next Saturday's program that is our gesture of support to the people of Ukraine. So then, instead of performing Tchaikovsky's Symphony No.1 next weekend, we shall instead be performing an equally great and brilliant and special work, especially so in these times, his Symphony No.2, the so-called Ukrainian Symphony. Now, that nickname may be new to you because those of you who are aficionados of the music of Tchaikovsky may have grown up referring to the Second Symphony of this great composer as the so-called Little Russian Symphony. But what we didn't realize is that Little Russia is an old kind of pejorative Russian slang for Ukraine. And it is now, in the last few years, there has been a growing recognition that we should change the nickname of this symphony back to what it actually reflects, because this symphony is based very generously, and in this sense it is a unique work of Tchaikovsky, who generally did not literally use folk music materials in his art. But this symphony is the one of Tchaikovsky's, all of his symphonies, that makes generous use of Ukrainian folk songs. Tchaikovsky wrote this symphony in the year 1872, mainly in the summer months, when he would always spend that time of year on the country estate, now still located in Ukraine, a town then called Kamenka, where his beloved sister lived with her wonderful and elegant and generous family, the Davidovs. Tchaikovsky, being a gay man in 19th century Russia and a bachelor, always yearned for the comfort of family life. He also never quite recovered from the loss of his mother, and the life that he got to share, to live in the family life of his sister and her family on the country house in Ukraine, meant to him more than he could say. It was one of the great enabling relationships of his entire life. And it was on that beautiful country estate in the Ukrainian countryside that Tchaikovsky would hear servants on the estate, most notably the head butler of the Davidov family, who would sing these beautiful Ukrainian folk songs. He was so enamored of them that he then decided to use them in this symphony that he was writing. It is in the first and second and fourth movements where these beautiful folk melodies from Ukraine make their appearance, and Tchaikovsky, being the genius composer that he was, not only states them very dramatically. You will hear that at the very, very beginning in the slow introduction to the first movement, where he quotes a Ukrainian folk song called Down Along the Mother Volga, and then develops these ideas to equally dramatic effect. Another Ukrainian folk song occupies the center of the central movement, the second movement, which is it's a charming, quaint, delicate little wedding march. You can almost see like a beautiful wedding in a country village. And then the Ukrainian folk song, it's a spinning song, occupies the center of that second slow movement of the symphony. The finale probably makes the most famous use of Ukrainian folk material. This was the song that the head butler at the Davidov estate sang for Tchaikovsky. It's an ancient Ukrainian folk song called The Crane, as in from the world of birds, not crane as construction. And it is a very simple, jaunty tune that Tchaikovsky then immediately starts treating in this brilliant web of variations, of symphonic variations, and the decoration around this very simple, jaunty little theme of a Ukrainian folk song gets more and more gloriously complicated, like as if he's weaving the strands together of a beautiful Persian rug. This is a very Eastern European, almost Central Asian influenced form of symphonic composition, where you don't develop material in the Germanic manner, in which you kind of break up motifs and modulate them, but rather you decorate them. Again, think of that musical equivalent of a Persian rug. However, in the middle of the finale, Tchaikovsky then takes that Ukrainian folk song and subjects it to a traditional, what we call a sonata form symphonic development. And then it's all brought together in a brilliant, glorious reprise of that, again, that once upon a time very simple Ukrainian folk song that now achieves this glorious peroration. I say this in particular not in any mode of triumphalism one way or the other, far from it. What I'm trying to point out is that in the finale of this second symphony, Tchaikovsky hits the trifecta, as it were. He takes a Ukrainian folk song and then develops it in what had by then, in the 1870s, become the classic Russian nationalist style of, again, endlessly decorating an idea. That was an idea begun by the father of Russian classical music, Mikhail Glinka. And then he subjects it to European, Germanic, Central European symphonic development. And I think what Tchaikovsky is trying to say in this movement is that all three worlds, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the East, we can all coexist. And here, once again, it is the message of great music, a great musical masterpiece of Tchaikovsky's Ukrainian symphony that is like a torch showing us the way.